Hey guys, welcome to You the Boss podcast, episode 11. I'm your host, Pam. Before I get started today, I do want to say thank you so much for kind of putting up with a little bit of my crazy schedule. I know I've been putting out an episode at least every week or every other week right now. So I just want to say thank you for tuning in and just coming along the chat with me. I do want to say that today we're going to be talking about learning how to let go. Before I go any further, I want to say I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and that's what life is all about, is about continuing to grow, and I'm just excited to kind of share my thoughts on this with you guys. So I want to start off by saying that learning to let go is not just in situations with other people. And it's not just in material things, but also it's in conversations with yourself, and recognizing your own patterns and recognizing the way that maybe you form relationships or you form friendships, recognizing those different patterns and saying, okay, this is where I need to make a change. I have really been thinking about this over the course of, I want to say almost the last 7 or 8 years, where I've had a very large shift in my life. After I graduated college, I cemented some friendships that I thought were cemented were not. And even relationships with family. And even downright to clothing that maybe I had in my closet for a while, and I was like, oh, well, maybe when I'm like this or when I'm doing this, I'll wear that, and just kind of coming to terms of right, it's time to let that go. I think I've started to learn in all of these things across the board, not just one thing over the other. I've learned to start to trust my gut, and I feel like this is where I want to spend most of my time this episode, so I'm going to be coming back and forth to that. But it's about listening to what it is that your gut is telling you, right? I'm a firm believer in not making permanent decisions on temporary feelings. And I've said that for a long time. And then more recently, I found myself being so excited that some restrictions were lifted or some things were happening, and finding myself making temporary plans or concrete plans on not so concrete emotions, and not following my gut in that. And it was actually a lesson to myself of oh, wow, wait a minute. Dinner with that person in 2 weeks sounds great, but I know that leading up to that, I got to take care of a couple things at home. I got to handle a couple things personally. I might not really be at my energy level there. So I may have to kind of change those plans up a bit, because I know right now I'm hype, I'm excited. And it may just be kind of maybe not realizing that I'm not trusting my gut, and knowing you might be a little tired then. So you might want to restructure those plans. I also think that learning to let go it kind of sounds negative. It kind of sounds like, oh, well, you have to let that go. And for me personally, I feel like sometimes when someone says that, I hear well, now you have to admit you failed. Now you have to kind of erase and start over kind of scenario. And, we have to realize that letting go of things or relationships or situations is not failure. In fact, it's actually kind of leveling up. We're realizing that something is no longer serving you, or someone in your life is no longer serving you, and you have got to reach that pivotal time of being you know what, right now my heart tells me that this isn't where I need to be, and I have to go. I got to let this go. I got to set this free. I do want to say that this is going to be a topic that I speak about very soon, because I've started to kind of really think about it. But this is not a nod at the current social media position of saying normalize ghosting people or normalize no longer speaking to people without an explanation. I don't actually support that motion, so more on that at a later time. This is more about saying, you know what, this doesn't feel right for me. This goes against what my values are or what I'm trying to do right now in my life. And so I'm going to say thank you, but no thank you. And this comes from a point of, again, trusting your gut, of trusting who you are internally, of finding that voice in yourself of saying, you know what, I live with me and we agree that this is not serving me. This is not serving us. And not from an emotional standpoint, but from a logical standpoint. I think that learning to let go is also part of not second guessing your situation. I'm gonna speak to anyone who's ever been in a relationship before, and you've noticed a pattern with your significant other where, let's say, for example, you guys don't live together, you just started dating, and you notice that every other weekend, you don't really hear from them. You know, they have a child and they'll tell you, hey, I have my son or daughter this weekend. And then you won't hear from them until Monday morning or maybe even almost afternoon. And that kind of makes you feel some kind of way. And you're like, I think something's wrong here, or not even something's wrong, like not even putting it on the other person, but it just doesn't feel good to you. And so instead of trying to suppress that and trying to be like, well, I'm not going to be that person and nag about it, or I'm not going to be that person and bring it up because, you know, we didn't say we were like exclusive or that we were serious or anything like that, but it does bother you, right? I think that that's your intuition and saying, yo, this bothers me and I need to do something about it. I think that too often we get comfortable with letting things bother us, and then they boil into other things, and the next thing you know, you're kind of in a bad place. And meanwhile, the other person or this situation doesn't even know what's going on in your mind or how it's making you feel. And because you haven't voiced it, now you have a moment of repression towards them or even aggression towards them. So don't second guess that intuition. Don't second guess when there's a part in your mind. I have read this several times and I promise I'm going to get the proper name for this, but there is a part of the brain that is triggered when you can't explain why something bothers you or what feels weird. You can't put your finger on it, but you just kind of like, you walk into a room or you have a conversation with somebody or someone's like energy, you know, they come up to you and you just feel off. You can't explain it. You can't like compare it to something else because again, you're just not sure what this feeling is and you can't verbalize it. Like you literally cannot find the words to make this feeling explained. And I want to let you know that I read recently that is actually a part of your brain that is linked to your intuition that's letting you know that something maybe not dangerous, but there's a reason that you feel a kind of way about that. And I think that is such a nod at us being able to recognize in ourselves when it's time to set something free, when it's time to let something go. I know a couple years ago, the Marie Kondo specials came out on Netflix and everyone was purging everything. I mean, myself included. I completely changed how I fold clothes and how I reorganize things. And it was like, if you're letting something go, you thank it. You say, thank you for serving me. And then you release it. You let it go. You donate it. You throw it away, whatever the conversation is. And I've just been thinking about like, well, why don't we do that with our situations? Why don't we routinely cycle through the way, you know, whenever mail piles up and you sit and you go through it and you're like, well, we can shred this. This needs attention. I already took care of this, that kind of scenario. Why don't we do that with situations in our lives, with different relationships in our lives? Why don't we do that with ourselves, right? You know, why don't we actually do that? Yes, with our clothes, but what about pots and pans, you know, plates and bowls? You know, I feel sometimes we put such an emotional attachment to certain things, and maybe those emotions aren't necessary. That's a part of your brain that's being taken up for something that literally is no longer serving you. Even with, you know, getting down to some things that could be a touchy subject, you know, getting down to some of those family things of like, you know, that certain family member, like I love them, but I can't be around them. You know, I can't be around them often or be around them on a one-on-one basis. It's just, I don't have it in me. You know, they are this way and I love them so much and I don't want to react towards them. You know, we have to recognize that sometimes letting go and remembering, you know, that we can't control everything. So there are certain things that we need to learn to forgive and set free. But in letting go, you got to let that energy go of saying, you know, Uncle John or Aunt Susie, you know, they get on my nerves and they're always talking about my hair and they're always mentioning my weight and they talk about my job choices and things like that. In many situations, we need to let those go. We need to release that and say, it's like water off my back. And in that, you have to trust your intuition and saying, you know what? I'm going to avoid them at that family party. I'm going to say hi. I'm going to nod my head at you. And then I have to release this energy from them because I can't carry this with me. I need to let this go. And it also comes down to you don't really want to put yourself in a position where you're second guessing that. You know, you will get outside forces that tell you, well, Pam, you can't be like that. You know, sometimes like things just are and that's just the way it is. And you need to also take that in. You need to also take that feedback and say, no, I understand what you're saying and I appreciate your input. Or maybe you don't. And then it's okay to say, I'm not letting that in either because I don't want to deal with that. You know, because opinions are heavy. You know, sometimes people come to you with an opinion and it's a reflection of themselves and we take on that journey. It's kind of like when someone's coming up the stairs with a bunch of grocery bags and you're like, hey man, do you want some help? And you take some of those bags from them. They're like, yeah, because you're sharing the load. We do that with other people's opinions. We do that with other people's situations with the reflection of our relationships. You know, prime example. One of your close friends is going through it with their significant other right now. You realize that they suspect that their significant other is cheating on them and they don't know how to approach it. They don't want to go through their phone because they're afraid what they're going to find, but also they're breaching trust. And they just have a lot going on with their significant other and they've decided to vent to you. And you're in a happy relationship and now you come to vent to your significant other of like, oh my gosh, I hope such and such is not cheating on her or him because that would be so upsetting. I wouldn't be able to believe it. And then your significant other says something from left field, like, don't get involved with that. Like, mind your business. And you're like, whoa, why am I minding my business? Like, what are you trying to say? So all of a sudden you're taking on this baggage of a situation that was vented to you. And really you need to let that go. You cannot carry other people's burdens with you and make them your own if they don't concern you. And I know for my fellow empaths, that is like probably the absolute most blasphemous thing I could have said. But we can't walk around carrying things that just are not ours, whether they never were ours or they are no longer ours. You know, if you're feeling a tug at your heart right now of some kind of scenario where you're like, yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to approach that. I guess I'm gonna have to let that go. I guess I'm going to have to have that conversation. I guess I'm gonna have to say, hey, I'm sorry. You know, I never talked to you about this before, and it's been laying on me, and I need to bring it up because I need some closure on this. Or I'm sorry, I just feel like we're in different places in our lives right now and I would like to revisit our relationship maybe sometime down the road. I just don't feel as close to you anymore. Or even altogether of saying like, you know, there was a time where you're like, you really pissed me off and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to disrupt the peace. I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. but I'm here to let you know that bothered me and I need to bring it up. I need to approach this. That's part of letting go too, is recognizing when we need to have those conversations. But also, we need to have conversations with ourselves where, you know what, self, you're a little too loyal. You're loyal to a fault. That person has played you time and time and time again, and here you are sticking up for them. Here you are saying, well, maybe they should get the benefit of the doubt. Here you are saying, well, maybe I can understand. No. The answer is no. The reply is no. The reply is close the chapter, move on, or approach the situation, amend the chapter, or close the chapter. Because in you harboring that, in you being loyal to a fault, in you not trusting your own intuition and saying that thing bothered me, my feelings are legitimate, and I need to do something about it so that either this doesn't continue or that this person understands that I'm owning my place in the situation to approach you and also call you out and get your perspective. You know, that is part of letting go. And that is part of recognizing, you know, the way that when things end or when we let things go, that doesn't mean that it's a failure or that we are giving up or that even we're being passive, because that can come from someone else's opinion where they're like, you need to approach that and this, that, and a third. And then they say, you're being too passive. You're being so passive about that. And I just don't like this for you. And no. If your opinion of letting something go is not approaching a person and just distancing yourself for the time being without closing it, this is a temporary okay. You know, when you get a flat tire, you don't drive on the donut that you put on the car. You get from point A to point B to make sure that you get there safely. And then you figure out in getting another tire or repairing the tire that's messed up. And when you let go, when you listen to your intuition, when you're in this mode of saying, this is my bubble, I have to live with my decisions for the rest of my life, and I need to trust my gut. And if you don't feel strong enough in something, if you feel like you need to grow in a certain place, do so. But when you start to trust yourself and saying, it's okay for me to release that, it's okay for me to say, you know what, no, that doesn't work for me. When you become 100% okay with that, in my opinion, I believe that is when we really start to live, when we really start to enjoy our lives. You know, letting go is also tied to people pleasing. And for my fellow people pleasers who like to keep the peace, I'm one of you. I join you in solidarity. And honestly, sometimes keeping the peace disrupts yours. And that's not okay. I'm a giver. I love to serve people. I love to do for others. I believe I'm part of all the love languages, but one of my first love languages is acts of service. I just love to do stuff for people, and I love when stuff gets done for me. And sometimes I find myself just exhausting myself in trying to serve others. And sometimes that means trying to accommodate everybody. Like if you're trying to make dinner plans and you're like, well, such and such has this on Wednesday, so we can't do it on Wednesdays, but such and such has this at this time on Thursday, so like maybe we can move it for later on Thursday, but that means that you got to get up late for work. And no. Make your motto going forward, hey, I wanted to see if you can grab dinner. These are my 2 dates. What about yours? And if you're reciprocating with a person, if there's a person in your life that you really do want to get dinner with, they're going to say, those days don't work for me, but actually I can move this around and let me get back to you. And then there will be the people, well, no, that doesn't work for me. What about this day? And you say, oh no, remember I have that thing. And they're like, oh, all right, well, maybe another time. You will find those relationships and they will come to the surface, and you'll be able to figure out who is a see you when I see you kind of friend or person in your life, and who is trying to be down for the cause. And truthfully, I want to end this episode by saying that silencing things on a regular basis to listen to that voice, to that intuition, is so important. I've been having a hard time sleeping over the last 2 months, where I can go to bed pretty early. And by early, I mean 11, 12 o'clock, and wake up at 4 in the morning. And instead of falling right back to sleep, I'll try to put a movie on. I'll try to play something in the background to help me go back to sleep. And next thing I know, it's 6:30 a.m. and I haven't been able to fall back to sleep. And the last few nights, I've found that in me just rolling over and counting backwards from 100 and keeping everything completely silent, I've fallen asleep, and I've stayed asleep until my alarm went off. And I was not restless, and I was not exhausted. And I can really compare that to that letting go portion and that intuition of saying, let me listen to me. Because depending on your belief, that intuition comes from a very sacred place. And you should trust that. And if something is raising alarms of let that go, in whichever format we've kind of discussed of it being let go of, I'm going to quote the movie. Thank you so much for listening today. Come back next week for another episode of You the Boss podcast.